3 people walked into the same 2 square miles of forest. In 3 different decades. None of them knew each other. None of them had any connection to each other whatsoever. And all 3 of them never walked back out. Same spot. Different years. No explanation. Now here is the part that should bother you most. This is not a coincidence. This is a cluster. And researcher David Paulides has spent over a decade mapping hundreds of them across America's national parks and forests. Specific locations where people keep disappearing. The same spots. Over and over again. Tonight I am starting with one of the most documented clusters he has ever found. Point Reyes National Seashore, California. Less than 2 square miles. 11 people gone since 1976. 3 of those cases are going to change the way you think about going into the woods. And I promise you this. By the time we get to the 3rd case, something is going to click in your brain. And you are not going to be able to unclick it. Let's get into it. Point Reyes National Seashore, California. 40 miles north of San Francisco. 71,000 acres of coastal wilderness. Dramatic cliffs. Dense forest. Thick fog that rolls in off the Pacific and turns the trails into something out of a ghost story. It is one of the most visited national park sites in California. And it has a problem. A specific section of trail near the Inverness Ridge. Elevation approximately 1,000 feet. Dense bishop pine forest. A trail that is well marked, well maintained, and well traveled. And in this section of trail, in an area covering less than 2 square miles, 11 people have vanished since 1976. 11 people. Same 2 square miles. Nearly 5 decades. Let me tell you about 3 of them. September 1983. A 38-year-old botanist named Carl Hooper was conducting a field survey along the Inverness Ridge Trail. He was not a casual hiker. He had a PhD. He had spent 20 years in the field. He knew this specific trail. He had walked it dozens of times as part of his research. His colleague dropped him off at the trailhead at 8 a.m. They agreed to meet back at the parking lot at 4 p.m. At 4 p.m., Carl was not there. His colleague waited an hour. Then called park rangers. Search teams entered the trail at 6 p.m. They found Carl's field notebook on the ground approximately half a mile in. Open. Pen still attached. Mid-sentence. The last entry read, "Unusual specimen near the old pine. Going to take a closer look." That was it. Mid-sentence. Like something interrupted him so suddenly he could not finish the word. The search lasted 8 days. Over 300 volunteers. Aircraft. Dogs. Everything. Carl Hooper was never found. Not a boot. Not a piece of clothing. Not a single biological trace. Now here's where I need you to pay attention. Because this next detail is the one that sent investigators down a rabbit hole they never climbed out of. The bishop pine forest in that section of the Inverness Ridge is so dense that visibility off trail is less than 15 feet. But the trail itself is completely open. Carl was a professional. He knew better than to leave a marked trail without marking his exit point. And yet, his notebook was on the trail. Mid-sentence. And he was gone. Like something on the other side of that 15-foot visibility line called to him. And he went. And whatever was waiting there did not let him come back. Here's my question for you right now. Carl was a trained field scientist. 20 years of experience. He knew these woods better than almost anyone. What could make a man like that drop his notebook mid-sentence and walk off a marked trail into dense forest? Not logically. Your gut answer. Drop it in the comments. I am going to read every single one. Because I have a theory of my own. And I want to see if anyone lands on the same thing I did. But first, the second case from this cluster. Because it gets stranger. August 1997. 14 years after Carl Hooper vanished. A 44-year-old retired school teacher named Diane Marsh was hiking the same trail. Different season. Different year. Same spot. Her husband Robert was hiking with her. They were experienced hikers. They hiked together every summer. This was supposed to be a relaxing day trip. They were a quarter-mile from where Carl's notebook had been found. Robert stopped to photograph a hawk sitting in a pine tree above the trail. He said it took him maybe 2 minutes to get the shot he wanted. He lowered his camera. Turned to show Diane. Diane was not there. He called her name. Silence. He called again. The forest gave him nothing back. Robert ran back down the trail calling for his wife. He ran forward. He checked both sides. Nothing. He called 911 from the trail at 11:43 a.m. When rangers arrived, they brought dogs. The dogs picked up Diane's scent immediately. They tracked it to the exact same spot where Carl's notebook had been found in 1983. And then the scent ended. Same spot. 14 years apart. Two completely unrelated people. Same 2 square miles. Same scent trail ending at the same point. Diane Marsh was never found. Robert Marsh gave a statement to investigators and to a journalist in 2001. He said that just before he stopped to photograph the hawk, Diane had said something to him. Something he had not thought much about at the time. She had said, "Do you hear that?" He had said, "Hear what?" She had said, "That sound. It is coming from over there." He had looked. He had heard nothing. He had turned back to the hawk. 2 minutes later she was gone. A sound. Coming from the trees. That Robert could not hear. Now I do not know about you. But I think about Carl Hooper's notebook. Mid-sentence. And I think about Diane Marsh saying, "Do you hear that?" And I think about the fact that trained search dogs tracked her scent to the exact same spot where Carl vanished 14 years earlier. And I cannot make those 3 things add up to anything comfortable. The third case from this cluster is the one that made David Paulides publicly say for the first time that he believed something was actively wrong with this specific location. June 2009. 12 years after Diane Marsh. A 26-year-old graduate student named Tyler Baines was trail running on the Inverness Ridge. Trail running. Not hiking. Moving fast. Earbuds in. GPS watch on his wrist tracking his every step. His running route was uploaded to his GPS app before he started. His girlfriend could see his location in real time on her phone at home. At 10:22 a.m., she watched his blue dot moving steadily along the trail. At 10:24 a.m., the blue dot stopped. She assumed he had stopped to rest or check his phone. At 10:31 a.m., the blue dot had not moved. She called him. No answer. She called again. No answer. She called park rangers at 10:45 a.m. When rangers reached his last GPS coordinates, they found his earbuds on the trail. Both of them. Neatly placed side by side on the ground. His GPS watch was beside them. Removed from his wrist and placed face up on the trail. Like someone had carefully taken them off and set them down. Tyler Baines was never found. 3 people. 3 decades. Same 2 square miles. Carl dropped his notebook mid-sentence. Diane heard a sound her husband could not hear. Tyler's earbuds and watch were placed neatly on the trail like he had carefully removed them before going somewhere he did not want to be tracked. Same spot. Every time. And here's what I noticed going through these cases. In every single one, there is a moment. Right before they disappear. Where something gets their attention. Carl was going to take a closer look at something. Diane heard a sound coming from somewhere. Tyler stopped mid-run and removed everything that could track him. Something got their attention. And then they were gone. So here's what I want to know. And I am genuinely asking. What do you think they saw? Not what sounds logical. Your gut answer. Because David Paulides has a theory. And he will not say it directly on camera. He just keeps pointing at the map. Same spot. Same spot. Same spot. Drop your theory below. Best answer gets pinned. 3 people. 3 decades. Same 2 square miles. Carl dropped his notebook mid-sentence. Diane heard a sound her husband could not hear. Tyler removed everything that could track him and placed it neatly on the trail. And in every single case, there is a moment, right before they disappeared, where something got their attention, and they stopped acting like themselves. Not afraid. Not confused. Just different. Like something reached in and turned a switch. And whatever was on the other side of that switch was more important than the trail. More important than the people waiting for them at home. More important than everything. I want your theory right now. What is in those 2 square miles at Point Reyes that has been pulling people off the trail for nearly 50 years? Not logically. Your gut answer. Drop it below. I am replying to the first 50 comments personally. And the most compelling theory gets featured in the theory breakdown video I am making after part 3. So drop it now. If you have made it this far, you are already part of this. Because next week is part 2. Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Tennessee. The most visited national park in America. 12 million visitors every year. And a specific corridor of trail where 9 people have vanished since 1988. But here's what makes the Smoky Mountains cluster different from Point Reyes. At Point Reyes, nobody saw it happen. In the Smokies, someone was watching. Right there. Close enough to call out. Close enough to reach in seconds. And they still could not stop it. Part 2 drops next week. Stay safe out there. And maybe, do not hike alone.